Meet Tiktaalik, large freshwater fish in Inuit. Not quite fish, not quite amphibian, Tiktaalik is a 375 million year old intermediate between fish and land living animals with a flat crocodile like head and a neck that can bend independently of its body. Tiktaalik's webbed fins contain bones that strikingly resemble an arm. Watch as we trace the evolution of arm bones from Tiktaalik to humans. Underneath the webbing of the fin, Tiktaalik has a large bone with a groove that 4 smaller bones fit in. This is one of the earliest wrist joints seen in evolutionary history. Other features of the upper limbs are present too. Why would Tiktaalik need a wrist? If we think of the demands of the environment, the need for development of the limbs becomes clear. Tiktaalik lived in shallow streams. In warm, dry seasons, the water levels would go down and produce mudflats. Tiktaalik required a strong upper body and mobile limbs to navigate the mudflats and avoid predators as big as 16 feet long. When we do a push-up, or attempt to do a push-up, we are exercising joints that first appeared in Tiktaalik. The wrist joint in Tiktaalik and in humans is what allows us to rest our hands flat against the ground, and strong chest muscles help us to perform push-ups.
Tiktaalik also had strong hind limbs and fins to propel through the water and walk on riverbeds. The pelvic bones were as large as the shoulders. The hind limbs were as important as the forelimbs in the transition to land. Think of this like moving from front-wheel drive in fish to four-wheel drive in four-legged animals. Front-wheel drive powers the 2 front wheels, dragging the back wheels behind it. Four-wheel drive powers all 4 limbs, allowing for more powerful movement. Tiktaalik's strong pelvis shows that as animals transitioned to land, they were ready to walk with strong legs rather than awkwardly drag themselves around with their front flippers for a few million years. Tiktaalik is probably not our direct ancestor, but a cousin of our ancestor. The first limbs to appear were in fish with scales and fins, but we can do far more complex tasks with our limbs, like play a piano or create claymation. How does Tiktaalik really relate to us? Let's take a genetic approach to understand how our development is related.
While organisms differ in their cells, and the cells in each of those organisms differ from one another through their function, the one thing they all have in common is the genetic code, DNA. Gene regulation is what allows the development of limbs. A body plan is laid out, and genes are either turned on or off at different points in development to give us arms, fingers, and legs. So how do our arms differentiate from our fingers? And how do our fingers differentiate from each other? These are just a few questions scientists have attempted to answer. Our limbs begin as buds that extend from the embryonic body and are regulated until the tip of the bud forms a paddle. The paddle will have different cells that give rise to our muscles, nerves, and skeleton. To study this process, scientists focused on chicken eggs. They found that the development of our bones inside of our limbs were controlled by 2 patches of tissues. If these tissues are removed early, only an upper arm develops. Remove it later, and the upper arm appears normal with a short forearm. If the tissues are removed even later, the arm is normal, but the hands turn out deformed. So what about our fingers? Humans have different digits, as do other organisms. By experimenting on chicks, scientists were able to discover what made our pinky side different from that of the thumb. Scientists removed a patch of tissue from the future pinky side of the chicken and implanted it on the thumb side. The result was a set of duplicate digits, meaning the pinky side repeated itself as a mirror image. The next question that scientists asked was what made the pinky different from the thumb. ZPA, or the zone of polarizing activity, is available in higher concentrations on the side of the pinky. The opposite thumb side had less active ZPA. Scientists next performed an experiment that created a barrier between ZPA and half of the limb. The side exposed to ZPA developed normal digits, while the side opposite to the barrier had deformed digits, if any at all. This made us interested in the molecular mechanisms of ZPA. What kind of signaling occurred for this all to happen? Scientists looked to the fly for the answer. Flies have the gene hedgehog, which makes body segments look different. Knowing the genomic sequence of hedgehog, they could screen for it in the chick's genome. After finding Sonic Hedgehog, they added a molecular dye that would leave a stain behind after activation of a gene. They found that the only thing that hedgehog was activating in the chick was ZPA. they were able to conclude that hedgehog is needed for ZPA function, and without either, limbs would either be deformed if they even formed at all.